Okay. Do you have me now, guys? It's going to take a second to come through. Craig, give me a line while you're here as well.
Yeah, well, I've had you the whole time.
No, you've had me, but there was a Windows update which has led to the resetting of a lot of properties. So it should be coming through now. Sound should be back now. Yeah, it looks like we've got sound, guys. Apologies on that one, guys. So, look, if you're listening to this one on the VOD, you'll be getting all the sound, all the audio and technical issues we're working through there. But there was an update for one of the programs that caused a reset of input and output devices, which didn't show up initially. But, yeah, I managed to catch that one there. So, yeah, it's a bit of a rewind, Jetta, indeed. So, hello to everyone in chat, belatedly. Again, if you were listening to this one on delay, you'll have caught all the issues that we've had there. But a massive hello to everyone who's here live. It's a super show this week. We've got a short turnaround between Team Wish Tuesday and obviously Thursday Night Football against the Panthers, which means it's a rapid-fire window of preparation for the team and for everyone involved. But for us, it just means it's an extra long show, doesn't it, Craig?
Yeah, we're going to go with the preview podcast being added into this one. I'm just sending a message because I'm getting messages about no sound.
Chat is saying they got us back loud and clear, so I imagine that's delayed messages from the start there. So
yeah.
I've got us on diagnostics of audio. So look, chat, if anything goes wrong, let us know. But otherwise, we'll start powering through all our usual checklists on the old live stream.
Yeah. So just as a little reminder, now that we've got sound, thank you to everyone for being here tonight, watching this live. Thank you to people who are listening to this on delay. Of course, a shout out to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and of course the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. We'll see you there Thursday night before the Panthers game. However, we're just holding off at the moment on the exact time and who our special guest might be, because we're waiting on really big news about the special guest this week. So hopefully we'll find out sometime tomorrow. Even if it ends up being on Thursday itself, just try and keep track of our socials. We normally aim to be on in the club about 2 hours beforehand. However, depending on when the guest is available, that might sort of change around. So that's why we're having to just hold off a bit. And if we do get to have our chance of having this particular guest, I think you'll be very, very happy to be able to catch him in Sturlo's in the home of the Eels Parramatta Leagues Club. John, also like and subscribe no matter what platform you're watching or listening to this on. Now, I've got some messages I need to send out as well. First of all, Noah, young fella, you've had a tough time, mate, with the broken legs. Keep at it. You know what your future is ahead of you. Keep working hard. Every one of these little hurdles is just going to make you stronger, mate. So Noah's now facing his second broken leg in around about 12 months, John. So it's put the end of his football season in early again for the second year in a row. So Noah, just shout out to you, mate. Keep at it. You've got the world in front of you, mate. So you'll be able to do it. John, also bit of sad news as well, because there was the passing of Scott Duro, who Newcastle player, made himself a bit of a legend name over for Catalans in the English Super League, and unfortunately passed away as a result of brain cancer that metastasised and went to other parts of his body. But also, John, this one's a little bit closer to home for Parramatta supporters. The father of Dan Keir, former Parramatta player Dan Keir, Steve Boomer Keir, he passed away again as a result of cancer. So we send our thoughts, our prayers to Steve's wife Diana, and also to Dan Keir as well, and all of the family and loved ones. We're thinking of you, and it's no doubt it's a difficult time, and Steve's a bit of a legend down around Canberra, and there's a lot of people that have, rallying to the family, and a lot of people have been touched by this sad news. So we send out our condolences to everyone who was close to Steve. John, I think we're probably at the point of being able to get on with our news podcast. So, mate, hit the stinger.
News team, assemble!
So, John, we don't have any more signing news this week, or not even too much in the way of rumours. The rumours have been there, haven't changed too much over the coming weeks. Maybe the only thing that seems to have been confirmed or close to confirmed is that one of the rumours, Jack Howarth, doesn't look like manifesting for the Eels.
Yeah, Melbourne
looks
having
like
a change of heart, it looks like.
Yeah. So we're going to move on from that pretty quickly and go straight to the injury ward, John. So I think the injury ward and missing player ward is mounting for the NRLW and just starting to creep down a bit for the NRL team.
Yeah, NRL kind of creeping down, although Charlie Geimer is a notable addition to the injury report this week. Did his posterior cruciate ligament in the loss to the Roosters back in round 19 against the Roosters. But must have happened late in the game because he played deep into that one, and he's out for what the club says is 8 to 10 weeks, which is essentially a season-ending injury, given that it's round 21 and a 27-round competition. Meanwhile, Junior Barlaw still listed on the injury report, Craig, although he is a round 21 designation on return, but it's not the first time this year we've had guys that are figured to return and still featuring on the injury report. So I guess with Junior, they're just taking it easy of him, especially when they've got someone like Tiankin Brown who they can give minutes to in the meantime. But likewise, you've got Arpa Twiddle round 23, Bailey Simonson round 23, and Sean Russell round 23. Of course, season enders for Jermaine Hopgood and Matt Doorey. Absent from that is a couple of players, in particular Will Penasini. So welcome back, Will. Named on the extended NRL roster, Craig, but will probably figure in New South Wales Cup, you'd imagine, given that he's named there as well. For the girls, likewise, they've got some good and bad news on injury and suspension fronts. They do get back star recruit Kiwi Joseph this week, as well as another new face in Jade Hertigan, who'll go into the Women's Premiership squad as the 7 in that roster there. And, of course, Kiwi starting for the Eels in the NRLW. They need her to fire and desperately. But they do lose Rashay Farmer-Sully for at least 1 week with a head injury assessment. She's now subject to concussion protocols, while Fleur Ginn, who was a withdrawal from the team prior to kickoff, is a hamstring TBC as well. A lot of TBCs in that injury report. They do get Boscoville back from the disciplinary side of things, Craig. She's served her 2-week suspension, but they lose Cassie Tauihiku to a 2-week suspension, grade 3 dangerous contact charge late in that game against the Titans. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag for injuries and suspensions for the Eels. I suppose more good than bad, but maybe not enough good. It's a bit rough still for the Eels.
Yeah, it is. It's a tough time. It feels like this year there's been maybe a black cat or two that's suffered a fate at the hands of some Parramatta people.
Someone stepped on cracks, walked on the ladders, broken a mirror, whatever superstition you ascribe to. There's something's gone wrong there.
Yeah, John. So look, we're going to go through the team lists as part of our Eels preview. But I thought it was best just to, at this stage for Team List Tuesday, just do a couple of names to mention who have come back in both the NRL and NRLW, and then we'll talk about each of the 5 teams in the preview.
Yeah, prominent ins in the NRL. I mean, you can't go past Mitchell Moses, uncorked as it were. He's fresh off that cork he sustained in the Game 3 series winner for the Blues, so he is now fit and in his number 7 jersey. He'll work alongside Ronald Volkman. The other big in for the Eels on the bench is Luca Moretti, who has cleared concussion protocols after a couple of weeks inside those parameters. And that's the one major change to the bench this week. You do have Will Penasini. Inside the team was 22 for the NRL, but I think he'll probably figure, I would assume, based on recent precedents, that he would play probably at least 40 minutes of New South Wales Cup football before coming back into NRL consideration. He's been out since round 9, so it's a long layoff. So getting some minutes into his legs wouldn't be the worst thing to do there. For the ladies, Craig, we mentioned, but Kiwi Joseph, massive in. She starts at lock forward. The Eels, subject to some injuries and suspensions in this grade, so they're sort of, I won't say they're shoveling deck chairs around the Titanic, but it's not too far off right now for them. So Rose Becker comes into the starting halves to work alongside Rachel Pearson because of the Toei Hiku suspension. Tanika Todd Hunter and Ruben Cherrington swap places from bench and starting half respectively. So Todd Hunter starting and Cherrington going back to the interchange. And then Keely Joseph is in at lock forward. Basketball equally another inclusion there on the bench, pushing Collier Gray. Sorry, Joseph's inclusion pushes Collier Gray to the bench where she joins Kapua. So that's the long and short of the 2 senior grades there. I don't know if you want the cliff notes on the lower grades, or do you want to wait?
No, I think we'll go. We'll tackle that into the preview because our Eels previews covering 5 grades is normally quite in depth. So I think we're best to leave it for then because we're going through the team list anyway when we do the previews. What I would like to touch on, John, is a couple of things. First of all, I want to talk about the results in the NRLW and the New South Wales Women's Premiership from last week. Then I also want to talk about some of the criticism that's been thrown at Mitch Moses from that was on 360 tonight,
about his
result of his presser.
His straight bat response to Jarome Luai joining the club and sort of wanting to focus on the present season. It was interesting. Yeah. So let's first of all give some takes on the women's results. There's no way of sugarcoating it, John. It's been an atrocious start to the season for the women's team. I can't look at the second halves that where they've been a little bit tighter in defence and maybe held the opponents a little bit better in the second half, because when you're so far behind at halftime and dialed in a first half like they have, and it's been almost identical for 3 weeks in a row, it's very, very difficult to find a positive at all within there. And to quote Jason Riles, the green shoots, I'm not seeing any at this stage, John. And maybe the injury situation has made it a bit difficult for Steve Georgalis to make some team changes, but he's got to be so close to making some serious changes. And when I say serious, I mean maybe like some name players. I mean, there's multiple senior players that should consider themselves. And look, when we say this, we're talking this from a purely football perspective. It's no criticism of the individual. Yeah, it needs to be a reminder that critiquing the player on the field is not an attack on the individual away from the field, because these are wonderful people on and off the field for the Parramatta Eels. But I think there are multiple senior players that are very lucky that there is an injury and suspension issue for the Eels right now, and that has maybe offered some grace that shouldn't be extended right now based on on-field form.
Yeah, and I'm not sure about some of the eligibility criteria for the depth players, the ones that aren't on NRL contracts.
Yeah, with the supplementary players and the development players and the dispensation required to activate certain players in the NRLW. It's a little bit, clear as mud when it comes to that sort of thing, because we know that I think the supplementary players is essentially what the NRL development players are. But the development players are it's more of an actual development contract rather than an NRL style development deal. So you need dispensation to play them. So look, the reality is that with the injuries and the suspensions, that it is a short deck for Steve and the girls there, and they sort of are probably doing what they can as they can. But it doesn't change the fact that there are multiple core players underperforming for this team. And like Chat's saying, they look slow, they look weak through contact. So there's questions about whether we've timed our preseason progressions wrong, about just their on-field mentality too. When you play as bad as you do, you open up so many really invasive, aggressive questions, and they've been way off the pace. And they were lucky against the Titans, Craig. That scoreboard, because of all the missed kicks, was very kind to them.
Yeah, and I thought the defence was still questionable in the second half, and the Titans didn't execute as well as they did in the first half through the early part of the second half, which allowed the Eels to I guess, get into a little bit of an arm wrestle with them. But you still had the feeling that we were going to open up defensively at any stage. My concern is this, John, is that in the NRL, we've all seen that if you allow the opposition to get a lot of possession, that it's hard to wrest back momentum. And the more that it puts your defence under pressure, the least likely it is that you're going to be able to claw anything back in attack if you keep falling further and further behind. And the Eels in these, especially the last 2 weeks, have gone, well, I think against the Dragons, I don't think we touched the ball.
It was a dozen sets against the Dragons, and I think it was 9 sets against the Titans.
Yeah.
You can't win the game without the ball. And
No. And the thing is that came about through things like set restarts, penalties, and tries being scored. So it's try scored, kick off, that sort of thing. So that also just accounts for it, just how easily the team was opening up. And what that tends to do is that highlights or certainly at least it makes it look like there are issues maybe around conditioning of the team, that they're not able to go with their opponents physically. We've certainly seen a problem with line speed in defence. We've seen a bit of an issue with lateral movement in defence. And then we've also seen problems with the defence around the ruck being caught short, like some of the darts out of dummy half that are catching the Eels out. Although also, to be fair there, that starts to come as the team's getting more and more fatigued. Then your opponents are taking the chance to go for those quick darts out of dummy half. So there's a lot of concerns. There's a lot of red flags being waved right now. It's to be honest, it's difficult to see where a win is going to come from based on the first 3 weeks and based on the fact that it looked like an extremely favourable draw at the start of the season, and I don't back away from that.
No, I think it just shows you how off the pace they've been. I think, look, the Tigers have been much better than anticipated. I think they win in round 3. They were 2-0.
No.
Yeah,
no,
so
they got beaten.
They're 2-1, so they've been better than advertised. But the Titans are an upper midfield team, and the Dragons, again, they're a lower bracket team, and the Eels have been off the pace against all of them.
Yeah. And it feels like it's getting worse on a weekly basis. Question for you: how much of a difference does Keely Joseph make coming into the middle?
Not enough, I don't think. I mean, obviously it's a massive inclusion, but you're talking about fundamental issues across the park. And if the girls are looking to a single player to be the panacea to their struggles, then they're going to go backwards even further than what Joseph would improve them by individually. This is a whole of team problem. And you're seeing really bad contact, really bad line speed. It's one of those things where offensively they're obviously struggling too, but a lot of the offensive issues can at least be mitigated by a lack of football because of the other issues. The reality is that they're defending so poorly that they're never going to be in a contest. And until they address the defensive side of the ball initially and give themselves a cornerstone to build off of, then they're not going to be winning any games or be in any games. And Joseph helps that around the middle, but they've been fragile on the edges as much as they have been through the middle. And they've had, again, pointing fingers at senior players. I thought Rachel Pearson was all at sea on the right edge defensively on the weekend, and I've mentioned Mahali's name before on the left edge. They're your senior leaders, and they're really struggling defensively. And some of it is just like a massive amount of workload that the entire team's doing because of this downward cycle of a lack of possession and an error, and then conceding off a kickoff. Therefore, it's 9 sets, 12 sets in a row. But Joseph is a huge inclusion, and she's our star recruit this season, and there's no doubt we've missed her for the first 3 weeks of the competition. But no one on that team should be saying to her or looking at her saying, she's going to fix it. This is a whole team problem.
Yeah, John, this is obviously an armchair critics.
Yeah, look, we're sitting here
it.
exactly far from being anywhere near a specialist in the field. And that's all our again, we always stress that we are just two bozos that yap about football. So there is far more minutiae and detail to this than just us saying it's as easy as making your tackles, because it's not. Like at a very simplistic level it is. But yeah, I feel it's an unfair pressure on Kiwi Joseph to be a talismanic figure for the team when there are just whole team issues here.
John, where I'd be looking at change, this is putting myself into a lofty position as coach of the team, is I'm concerned that Rachel Pearson's seems to be playing completely without confidence. And to me, I measure that with her penalty kicks for line, where she's got a much better boot than someone who's kicking from touch from the tram line and getting like a 3 to 5 metre ground gained through a penalty kick for touch. And I look back to that, the missed touch finder, I think it was in the first round against the Tigers, where we had a penalty, I think, failed to find touch, and the Tigers came down in that set of 6 and scored a try. And I look at it and I go, geez, are we that concerned with safety first at the moment that Rachel's not going for it as much with those kicks? But it just, I don't know, there's just a feel about how she's playing, that she's playing without confidence. The other thing that I'd look at doing is, and by the way, I don't know whether that's maybe the answer there for Rachel is to have a rest for a week. It makes it more difficult with the suspension of Cassie Toihiku as well, that she's not able to be in the halves this week. So we have a problem there. But the other thing that I'd be looking to do is the 2 senior members of the pack, I'd actually be looking to start them from the interchange, because I see them as having strike weapon capacity, but I don't like the longer minutes for both of them, and that's Elsie and Mahalia. So I'd be looking at starting both of them from the interchange and bringing them on in more of a strike capacity. Elsie's always got that strike capacity.
I mean, we saw that against the Titans. She was able to power through for 2 tries and be the lone offensive spark for the Eels. So, yeah, look, I think that there is, for those 2 players, perhaps bench roles, especially Elsie. I think Elsie definitely has the capacity to be a good bench forward. I think with Pearson, the concern stretched back into last year. And, again, trying to be polite, but the game's gotten faster and faster, and I'm not sure if Rachel's been able to stay up with the pace of the game. And there's a tough call to be made. And do the Eels want to persevere with Rachel thinking that she can adapt to the game, or make a big call and go in a different direction? I don't know. But, look, if the Eels lose out from here, it's going to be tough calls on the roster from top to bottom. We talked about it at the NRL. If you keep losing players, coaches, staff, they all your jobs come under scrutiny, under intense scrutiny. So there's some tough calls to be made. And
yeah, and we should mention that, and we will be talking about it anyway in the preview, but the New South Wales Women's Premiership team had another big win on the weekend, and so they should. They're playing Wenty, and Wenty is they're one of the feeders for Parramatta. So as well as having players that aren't part of the Parramatta system, they do get Parramatta players as like a bit of an overflow there as well. But we're now going to, at your suggestion, John, this week we're going to call Freedom Crichton Rapati Freedom
Yeah.
Crichton Rapati after
keep bagging Hatties.
Another multiple try scoring effort from Freedom.
Yeah.
She's scoring tries in exactly the same manner as which she did in the Tasha Gale Cup. So she's on fire out there on the wing, and what people have to realise, she's not catching the ball and placing it over the line. She's taking runs out of dummy half and going 65, 70 metres through the middle of the ruck and going the length of the field with tries. She's getting the ball out wide and creating something out of nothing. I think there was one try she had to go back and regather a pass and then turned around and then just shredded the opposition on the weekend. So, but look, we'll leave any more chat on this to the preview. Let's talk about what transpired from Mitch Moses' presser today, and the way on Fox League, I think it was in both the NRL Tonight and 360, put Mitch Moses' comments under the spotlight and was trying to make something out of it. I don't know about you, John, but if I've got my captain, the captain of my team, and they're talking about a player that's going to arrive next year, I don't want them talking him up yet, because number one, I think it's disrespectful to the players that you've got there at the moment. And number two, it's got nothing to do with the game this week. It's like, as a captain, a captain has a similar role to the coach. You saw Jason Riles deflecting comments about Jarome Luai the previous week. And we're pretty confident Jarome had signed, so it was well and truly deflecting there. But I don't know about you, John, but I don't see a problem with the answers that Mitch Moses gave today, and he was portrayed as being a bit cranky and surly, and I thought everything bat. Was. Yeah. Like, he was playing a straight bat, he was smiling, and he just said, look, you can ask me this any way you want and keep asking. You're going to keep the same answers.
Come November 1, I will talk about next year all you want, essentially, is what he was saying. And the reality is, and I know people will see this different ways. Some people might think that Moses was being churlish and there's deep-seated issues there about his outlook on the Eels, if you want to take that sort of outlook on it. But I think the reality is that he was damned if he did, damned if he didn't. If he starts speaking lavishly about the impact that Jarome Luai is going to have for us next year, there'll be people saying, well, why is he locked in for this week against Penrith? And instead, he chooses to lock in for this week against Penrith, and it's like, why is he being so churlish and standoffish about Luai when he wasn't being standoffish? It's much ado about nothing. Like you said, and like Chad is saying, the media is always chasing a headline and a soundbite here. I'm sure we'll have plenty of, and much to the chagrin of fans that want results, I'm sure we're going to get plenty of positive puff pieces about Moses and Luai and how great they are together in the off-season and the pre-season. There'll be plenty of media about that when it comes to it. And then people will be saying, give us the results, which is what Moses is doing right now. He's focusing on results now. But we'll get the puff pieces later for people that want those. But I don't blame Moses. Jerome's going to be his teammate in 2027, but he wants to win now. And if you've gone the other way, and if you'd gone, wow, Jerome's going to be so great for us, blah blah blah, then people will say, why aren't you worried about the season 2026? Yeah,
that's it. That's the whole thing. If he spent the presser answering in depth all these questions that were being asked about Jarome Luai, he would have probably had no time to answer the questions about this week. There might have been no focus on it. And look, I get where the journos are coming from, because every week when players are put up by each club for their media days, the journos are told who's there, and then they've got to start thinking, well, what am I going to ask the players? And they're not always thinking about, what can I ask about this week's game? They're interested in opinions by the player, or opinions that player might have about something that might be going on at the club at the time. It's something where I'm going to put up the soundbite of the short of Andy Raymond talking about journos and how they respond to being on tour and the sort of stories that they put out or don't put out because I think it's relevant. But I do get the journos in this situation. But once the question had been asked a couple of times, like, get the hint.
Yeah.
Get the hint.
Look, it's one of those things where they're absolutely entitled to ask a question about Luai or three, but when the player has made it clear that they want to talk about this week or about this season, it's like, okay, well, you're not going to get the soundbite you want. Let's move on and keep the presser going. Yeah, completely within their rights to ask the question, but yeah, getting bogged down on it is a them problem, not a Moses problem. A lot of para talk in that segment actually. Peter Bedell, a Queensland journalist, went in on Jason Riles.
Oh,
and look, I kind of understand some of his sentiment because, you know, he talked about the Eels moved on from Brad Arthur with this winning percentage from, you know, these years, and he inherited the roster and they've got high expectations and whatnot. I do think that next year, I think the spotlight will intensify on Jason Riles. I think that's a pretty safe assumption. He's going to be in the third year of his 4-year deal with the Eels. It's going to be well and truly his roster by that stage, and whether the Eels can get the roster to where it needs to be is a separate question. There's an important separate question. But look, I think you can be critical of some aspects of the Eels right now, like beyond what is in his control, or perhaps stuff that is in his control as opposed to what is beyond his control. And maybe, you know, there's I would argue a slight divorce from the vision presented with junior development as opposed to some of the selections in New South Wales Cup and whatnot. But there is a lot of stuff outside his control right now. He's inherited a roster that the neutral opinion by far and large, as based on the response from Anasta and Riccio and Gordon, is still a ways off, because they were saying, don't you dare compare the Brisbane Broncos roster to the Parramatta Eels roster, which is very fair. But yeah, look, next year I think things start to intensify. But yeah, there was a bit of a card-carrying agenda there, I think, in that regard.
Who did Peter Bedell have a run-in with in the dressing room recently? I'm trying to think. There was like some, and people in chat might remember this, but Bedell ended up responding along the lines of, "This is my town.
Oh,
I'll say what I want." Like it was someone didn't want him in the dressing sheds or something like that, and he said, "This is my town. I'll do what I want," or words to that effect.
He did have a beef with funnily enough, given that he was on the show, but he and Gordon Tallis had a bit of a tete about Adam Reynolds and Gordy's opinion on Reynolds doing injury rehab versus media commitments. I'm trying to think if there was something else recently. Spencer. Oh, there's a topical.
There you go. Yeah, Spencer Leniu.
Yeah, Spencer Leniu. There you go. So, yeah. Look.
Yeah. I think Spencer Leniu was making comments about what's he doing in here or words to that effect, and he was like, "Well, this is my town. I'll go wherever I want," or words to that effect. And I'm thinking, well, you got to have a bit of an ego as a journo to come back at a footballer
in a sanctum,
in their inner sanctum, to say, "I'll go wherever the hell I want to go."
Yeah.
Now, you can look at that as having balls, or you can look at that as someone who's got an
look. You don't go far in professional sports without an ego. Like you can't go far without some inflated degree of self-confidence. Wherever it gets you in trouble for being too inflated is, you know, where that fine line is. But, you know, Peter Bedell's very high up at was it Courier Mail up there? You know, you don't get up the ranks there without, you know, knowing how to swing your persona around a bit there. And clearly, when you meet someone like Spencer, who's also he's an elite athlete, he's going to have a big ego too. That's what happens. But yeah, look, there was a bit of a anti-power agenda on the menu today on 360, which again we're struggling. So we're sort of making ourselves pretty easy targets in that regard. But in regards to criticism of Riles, like I've taken my, I'll say, shots at Riles this year about bench selections and rotations and whatnot. He's still a young coach that is learning, so there's going to be those mistakes, or at least from, again, armchair coach right here, isn't it, Craig? Like mistakes from the outside looking in. I use the term mistake very loosely there, a critique from someone that has not been paid to coach rugby league. But
John, also, to be fair, let's be fair about yourself as well. Like you were someone that had a very high opinion of Brad Arthur, but you also spoke about issues that you had with his bench rotation.
Absolutely. Like, no coach is immune from criticism. And it is a reminder for Riles that, we look at the young players that are struggling here and there, and it's a reminder he's a young coach. Like, relatively speaking, he's a young coach. In his second year as a NRL head coach, it is not an easy gig, let alone factoring the pressure of being the NRL coach at Parramatta, which has its own unique set of expectations and the burden of legacy. So, yeah, I think next year you can start really being, if you want to get your knives out for the coach, I think next year's probably the open season for a lot of people. But even then next year, I think there's going to be key benchmarks to meet, but I still think there's definitely room to grow beyond there for the team and the coach. So, yeah, we indulge ourselves with a little bit of 360 discussion there, but let's not get too immersed into it because it is what it is. It's junk food for, sports discourse. They want to get you in with the spicy takes and the drama, and they want to engage.
Well, talk about spicy takes and the drama. I mean, what about making a story out of the journalists themselves, out of the commentators with Danny Weidler and Brayton Astor, and that becomes a story? How does that become a story?
Well, the genesis of that was Weidler suggesting that Anas's been carrying a feud for 20 years or something from State of Origin, right? That Laurie Daly was a selector that got him out of Origin, therefore Anasta's going in on Daly. Is that am I right in saying this? Is that the genesis?
Do you know what? I never even saw what the genesis of it was. All I saw was the reaction that Brayton Astor had, and then the social media storm that came out of it. And then it became a talking point on the next on the Monday version of the Monday episode of 360.
This is like we're talking about professional wrestling sort of areas right now. Like a generated feud.
The breaking kayfabe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They got the marks marking. So it's sometimes you stretch for news, you got to generate a little bit, it feels like. And thankfully, without too many dramas in the code right now, there's been a bit of a gap in some of the discourse, and they're sort of stretching. Yeah, it's like schoolgirls, and drama for fellas too. This is sports drama, and a lot of boys and girls too watch rugby league. But evidently, there's a market for it. People want their junk food when it comes to rugby league discourse, to professional sports discourse. So that's where 360's at, Craig. On some of those topics there.
Tony, if they can't be given a reality show of their own, stick them in the ring for charity.
Yeah, I mean, boxing and rugby league are tied at the hip often, it feels like. So, there's certainly, I think some people pay to see Anasta versus Weidler, or, Fox could maybe host it on one of their fight night cards. But we did talk briefly about Spencer Leniu there. I did see chat earlier at the start saying there were concerns that the Leniu deal has been scuppered or never got off the ground, and that the Roosters never gave permission for clubs to talk to Spencer Leniu. I mean, officially, that's definitely the correct line there, is that the Roosters have not given clubs any official stance or room to negotiate. But if you remember, AJ's been in our chat multiple times, and he's sort of lent credence to there is some friction there between Leniu and the Roosters, and like pointing towards a potential parting of the ways there. So, yeah, look, Craig, I don't know if you've got anything to add to that one there, but the Leniu situation, if there is something there is a blueprint with the Roosters in terms of how they handle that stuff. It won't be dealt with until the end of the season. They do not like anything derailing their actual in-season campaigns. They handle that business very, very carefully, very delicately. But maybe the Eels have missed out. I don't know. It'll put that much more pressure on the club. But equally, I don't know if we're still in it, Craig. But we have, regardless, I don't think you're going to get any sort of outcome on that until the season winds up.
As I said, John, I had very strong mail, not coming out of the club, but in the peripherals of the club, from people who I would have thought would have had a good handle on what was happening. And I said at the time that it wasn't in the realms of the strength of Jarome Luai in terms of saying, no, look, we can almost talk about this as done. But I said I was virtually prepared to call it. But I also said I didn't expect any announcements for a while, because there's always that issue around he's under contract with another club for next year. And technically there can't be anything until November. I don't know. Look, I find it interesting, John, that there's the Roosters haven't given official permission for him to negotiate with anyone. There's conflicting stuff around that.
Yeah.
That's out there.
Look, they certainly haven't come out and said that clubs are free to negotiate for him, Mike. But that's not to say that very quietly there isn't stuff happening. There's a lot, of rugby league that, as much as the press would love to be able to publicise everything, I think some clubs do run relatively tight ships there. So wait and see. Look,
John, the thing is, there are moving chess pieces. There are very much moving chess pieces in the player market. And you've seen some of that happening with Joey Manu appearing on the scene.
Little paparazzi sniper there on the train at Sydney Airport, catching the shot of Chamis and Manu. Yeah, and speaking...
And John, just to clarify this a little bit more, the strong mail is he's going to go to PNG. Don't rule out the Roosters' interest in getting him back there as well. And the other thing is, too, that the Roosters have a couple of other really big targets that they're aiming for as well. But they're not going to get those targets without clearing up a bit of cap space.
Yeah.
And this is where, like I said, there's moving deck chairs all the time. Like if you get like one domino fall, then the rest can start to follow after that. It just needs that first domino to fall. So I think there's a bit that's at play at the moment for things to get to the point of announcement. And I go back to what I said a number of weeks ago, and it looked like at the time that I put my foot in my mouth, and the opposite had happened when I said I didn't expect any news on anything till later in the season. I still say that I think some of the Eels signings aren't likely to be official until we move towards really the absolute latter part of the season.
If they miss them, it no doubt adds heavy intensity on the scrutiny of the club. So they've got to get it right. But those two expansion clubs, subject to some questions from chat, Craig. You mentioned Joey Manu being spotted on the train to the international airport with Chamis, flying out to a lovely dinner at Port Moresby. The other player that they've signed, or have they officially announced it? But former Eels Zach Lomax set to join the expansion franchise in 2028. And people in chat were asking us what we thought about Lomax going to the Chiefs, which it is important to remind people that are listening and watching. While Lomax's original deal ran through another year, the actual compromise that came out of the court settlement was that the Eels would shave 1 year off his contract, so he would be eligible to be a free agent in 2028, as opposed to his contract running through 2028 for the Eels. So look, it's short and sweet for me, Craig. I really don't care. Like he's not an Eel. And I suppose the funny part out of this one is, while strictly speaking, we are still losers in this because we didn't get a player out of it. I think the biggest losers out of this are the Melbourne Storm, who cut off their nose to spite their face when the Eels came to them asking for a reasonably fair player swap and nominated a couple of players, including Jack Howarth, as a potential candidate to swap clubs to give the two teams value. And then they went out and shopped Jack Howarth for a fortnight, wanted Zach Lomax again, and then put Howarth up for grabs for Lomax to bail out on the Western Force. And he chose then that he suddenly contracts mean something to him, which I find that is an absolutely wicked sense of humour. Like whether it's intentional or not, that is some of the funniest shit I've seen in a long time. That suddenly the contract means something. But yeah, look, as of that settlement, he's a free agent to rejoin the league in 2028. It's whatever. Like good for the Code to get back a player like Zach, but he's a mercenary. So good luck to the Chiefs keeping him on the books, or they do have the benefit of those tax-free dollars, and those tax-free dollar dues might be exactly what he wants. But I don't really care.
Yeah, look, the only thing I would say to people is, don't rewrite history around Zach Lomax. What happened. Like there is no other way to reword it. It was he was looking to get out of the Eels well before the season was over. He made the the first sort of inquiries, and we were left in the lurch. We defended our right to say, look, you just can't go and sign with someone else while you've got a contract with us, while you've got a conditional release from us to go to other codes. You can't go signing for another NRL team without our express permission. It was as straightforward as you could get. And as you said, John, Melbourne did themselves a disservice with that.
I know we got screwed out of it too, but it is really funny. That is really like if you just take a step back and look at how that's played out, and they've literally cut off their nose to spite their face. And the other expansion franchise in question related to the Parramatta Eels is the Perth Bears, Craig, because reports came out this week that the Bears are trying to tempt Junior Barlow away from Parramatta. Junior's been subject to a 1-year extension for the club, I believe. They're trying to work out a means to keep him at the club. But it does entail a pretty solid haircut on the old salary, at least as the rumours from the media have been reporting. Should the Eels be worried about what the Perth Bears can bring to the table? I mean, they can throw some serious money at him, and they need some experience in the forward pack. But can the Eels fend off the Bears? Should they fend off the Bears? I suppose is the first question, which I think most people will say yes. But what's your take on the old Perth Bears Junior Barlow situation there?
Oh, look, the ideal thing is that Junior stays at the club. I don't know. I know Junior spent some time away at Canberra, but I wouldn't want to see him finish his career at another NRL club. So that's just a personal viewpoint there. As far as the Eels fending off the Bears, well, to a point. I would say to a point, because the Eels would have, as you've suggested, John, the Eels would have had a bit of a reviewed contract with regard to Junior, so that he wasn't going to be on the same pay packet that he had been prior to this, where he was one of the best paid props in the game. And with respect to Junior, he's at the back end of his career. We've got injury issues at the moment. I think he's got a lot to offer still to the club in terms of his mentorship of the younger players coming through. I'm pretty sure the Eels are keen to keep him at the club in a different role as well when his career is over.
Long term, this is big picture, yeah.
Yeah. So he'll transition into a different role at the club, so that he's got an occupation post football that he'll be able to move into, and at some point, whether it's next year or the year after, I would imagine there would be a blend of the new role and football to a certain extent. Now, for him to go to Perth means the likelihood of packing the family
uprooting the family for 12
and going
months.
there for a couple of years. I don't think Junior was too keen on going over to Super League for the similar reason of having to uproot the family for a couple of years. It might be maybe the difference in coin is too much to ignore, so that
that's a very real factor. If the Perth Bears give him marquee money, then he will have to consider that very seriously, because that's...
Oh, yeah, and you cannot blame a player for making the most out of their career, especially as they get towards the end of their career. So what I'm saying is I wouldn't want the Eels to get into a bidding war, because I don't think we come out as a winner in a bidding war there. And that might sound contradictory when I'm suggesting that we need to accept that we're going to have to fork out more money to recruit certain players.
It's the difference between retaining an internal talent and recruiting external talent. And the Eels having some leverage here against the Bears in terms of notional value, because there is on-field and off-field value for Junior being set up in Western Sydney versus, like you said, uprooting his family to go across to Perth. And there is absolutely a threshold there where they might be able to offer him the money that would take to uproot him, which is the core consideration here. As for Junior and the Eels, Craig, I think there is absolutely value to be had in that partnership next year, should he stay on. I think that Junior's game, his skill set is such that even as the game changes at the whims of some questionable vision based on set restarts and whatnot, I think that he can still carve out a very nice role on the bench of the Parramatta Eels. Like you said, he's a fantastic mentor to all the young Pacifica boys. And, the allure for him now is that with Luai coming and knock on wood that they, we just mentioned Spencer Leniu and what the situation there is. If they can secure Leniu and Luai for next year, then there is a really strong Samoan theme to the team. And I think he would relish that. That's...
Oh, I'm sure he would, John. The other thing is too, he's the only one in that Parramatta team that has the skill set to go close to replicating the role that Dylan Walker plays.
Exactly. He's the guy that can be that ball playing lock or prop, I suppose, depending on how you want to tag him, because he's a bit bigger than Dylan. And for Junior, I think the biggest thing for him, and I know it's going to be difficult because there is a World Cup looming at the end of his season, and that's traditionally been the place where he's gotten a bit of trouble with the injuries, is if he stays at the Eels, can they just nurse him through the preseason and get him fully fit heading into season 2027? Because he's been in the wars lately. I don't think people fully comprehend he broke his foot in the Four Nations end of last year, and for a big fella, a foot injury is absolutely brutal because you put so much weight through the entirety of your body onto that mechanism there. But then he obviously had the knee clean out. He's been in the wars, so if they can keep him and get him back to being fit, I think there is absolutely some genuine value there for Junior off the bench, or even being a spot starter for the Eels, depending on what sort of pack they want to run in a given week. So I would like to see the club and Junior hash it out and get that deal done sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Now, are there any questions from chat before we launch into our previews?
I think I covered a lot of them just then when we were sort of segueing through all the expansion club stuff there. Chat, any last second questions? I mean, Jim asked a fair question. If you let Junior go, who replaces him? That is part of the crux of the issue here, is that...
Now, do you want to clarify which Jim that is?
That's, yes, Jim Duggan, who's Mitchell Moses' number one fan, old Jimmy. And he asked, he's got a fair follow-up question, which I'm not sure you can answer. Do we have clarity on the top 30 yet as of this year? I'm not sure if you've been given any insights into who got the upgrades.
No, John, I think I haven't been able to get up to Kellyville much lately in the last few weeks. So, and to be honest,
I am surprised.
It's been something I've wanted to know, but it hasn't been in the forefront of my mind to clarify. I just figured it was maybe Big T that maybe had been upgraded.
Yeah, or maybe Saxon, I guess, too, is probably another fair option. I am surprised, and this isn't a Parramatta thing, this is an NRL thing, that clubs aren't mandated to officially publicise their top 30 lists as of June 30, who figures for the season. But then again, that complete lack of contract transparency sort of goes hand in hand with the NRL, doesn't it? We keep a lot of our contract details very under wraps here. Got a question from Chris here, which I can pull up for you, mate. I'll go to this place here. Who is playing in that spot for you, mate? So the Penrith number 6 you want? Okay. The Penrith number 6 in the Jersey Flegg is... I see why you want me to pull him up. Tuamali Mavaliatoaloa Patea is the captain and 5'8" for the Penrith Panthers.
How good is John at?
Well, let's see if it's... I'm not sure how close that is to how it should be. Is that a
hyphenated name,
No,
John?
that is one first name right there. So that's off the dome, and I apologise to Mr. Patea if I've gotten that anywhere near wrong, because chances are I've got it way wrong. I think it's Tolau Patea is the shortened name, if I recall correctly. But New South Wales Rugby League doing proper honorifics to his full Christian first name there. It's a mouthful. But we will talk about Mr. Patea.
How was it? How did you say it again, John?
God, you guys are evil. Tua Malia Mava Tola Patea, I think it is. Mavea Tolau. Yeah, it's I suppose it's a problem. The problem with these things here is because the way your brain works is you want to break it up into the segments that make sense. But with a lot of the Pacifica names, there is a real roll on of how their names go, right? And so by shortening something up, you end up not correctly pronouncing it. So, like I said, my apologies to Mr. Patea if I've gotten that wrong there. But that is a very my favourite one when it comes to this stuff, Craig, and I always go to the NFL for this. But I've mentioned it before, but there is a a big Tampa Bay defensive tackle called Vita Vea, who I believe is he Samoan American. Where is he? I think he's Samoan American. Absolute monster of a player. He's called Tevita Vea, but his full name is Tevita Tuli Akiono Tui Piloto Masezi Vaha Fahoko Falatau Vita Vea. And you can understand why they just call him Vita Vea.
Is that all one?
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's 8 names, and Vita is also in there as a ninth, in inverted commas, name there that, because he's shortened to Vita, to Vita. So yeah, it's a mouthful.
There you go, John.
Yeah.
Any other questions, or can we launch into the
No,
previews?
I think we'll get into the next part of the podcast. So Jim does a question: is Moses playing? Well, that's up. I know, like I said, Jim's Mitch's number one fan there, but I'm quietly confident that Mitch will be playing this week. But you never know with the way the Eels go.
Yeah, no, let's back him in. Okay, so we'll go from. It's not going to be in order because the NRL is the first cab off the rank, but we'll go to the New South Wales Women's Premiership team. Can you quickly run through it, John? And we'll do a quick preview of their clash this week.
Yeah, they got some changes this week by way of players coming back from injury, and also some interesting selections, it's got to be said, because there is a fullback dropped to the bench. Well, not dropped. She came back from injury via the bench. So we start at the number one role, and it's not Ella Carlisle, it's Tess Staines. Ella is on the bench this week, but on the wings, it's the young pair of Zion Liga and Freedom Crichton Rapati. In the centres, Kiana Takarangi and Josie Lenars are your 3 and 4. We got a new look halves pairing with Tess out at fullback. We've got new recruit Jade Hertigan finally returning from a preseason injury. She'll partner Aliyah Sufan, 5'8" and halfback there respectively. Alana O'Loughlin and Laura Kamer in the front row. Ava Jones at dummy half. Tia Matthews back on the edge this week after deputising at lock forward. She's joined on the opposite flank by Kate Fallon. Jess Kennedy moves from front row to back row and lock forward there this week, and she will captain the team. Bailey Marchong is back, and she takes her place as the dummy half utility on the bench. She's joined by the aforementioned Ella Carlisle, and then a trio of young players with Leonie Yave and Mitzi Cairns rounding out the 4-player bench. Tegan Long, the concussion substitute with the 18 on her back. Eels playing as part of a doubleheader at Eric Tweedale here, Craig. Sunday, 2:30pm kickoff here. Eels, as you mentioned earlier in the podcast, coming off a thumping win over Wenty, and looking to really build momentum towards the closing rounds of the season here as they look to try and punch their tickets to a maiden New South Wales Women's Premiership final series for themselves.
Yeah, I thought Tess Staines did rather well at 5'8" last week, John. We were back to the dummy half rotation with Ava Jones and Bailey Marchong reprising their Tasha Gale partnership and rotation that was there, and it worked just as effectively there. I think Bailey scored a late try with a little grubber ahead, regather, and score. And I think Ava might have scored backing up a break off the top of my head. But they both had strong games there. We spoke about Freedom earlier. She's doing the same sort of things as what she was doing in Tasha Gale. She's doing it in the New South Wales Women's Premiership. She is an NRLW player. It's been said about other players before, but it's written all over her. NRLW player. You don't want to rush people because she could still play Tasha Gale next year, but she's just been unstoppable out on the wing. I'm expecting that the Eels will go on with it again this week. We predicted a strong win against the Wenty Magpies. They delivered last week.
Penrith doing well in this grade, though. 4 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. So they're right up there with the Parramatta Eels. In fact, they're actually half a point ahead of the Eels, or half a game ahead of the Eels.
Yes. Look, I go back to they are improved on last year, the Panthers. The Eels got the job done comfortably last year against the Panthers. I think it was the Eels might have won 30 to something off the top of my head, but it was a rather convincing win that they had last season. And I know it's a different season, but I think the Eels, whilst in some respects they've been weakened by players that have been moved up, they've also been strengthened by Jade Hertigan coming into the team there. And if you're only able to play Ella Carlisle off the bench, you're in a strong place in terms of what your team looks like. So I'm going to tip them to win. You're tipping a close result.
I think a closer result than we saw last year. Look, Penrith slightly had the Eels on the ladder, although you could point some of that to the Eels maybe squandering a result against the West Tigers a couple of weeks ago. So I think their form line's fantastic still. Like, I know there was an aberration there against the Tigers. We've been run down. But I'm just trying to think. Yeah, look, I know it's a complex situation in NRLW in terms of who can be available for selection, but there is a lot to play for here for the girls. Like, they want to not just make the finals in women's premiership, but there's potentially higher honours to be called upon for some of these players. So, yeah, I think they win. And even though it'll be a close game, it'll be a good win, which, just quality football from both sides, I think, is the mandate for that. So I'm hoping that they can build two in a row here and make a big proper turn towards booking a seat in the final four come the end of the season. Because they don't let you scout ahead here in the women's premiership. Is it 11-round season in the women's premiership? I'm not sure on the exact details, but it's 12 teams, so 11 rounds and a bye seems fairly likely.
Yeah. Look, I don't want to see them have the same thing happen as did against the Steelers a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
Because that was
the Steelers on the Tigers. That was
the Steelers. Yep. Look, John, let's jump from New South Wales Women's Premiership into the other women's game, which is the NRLW. So we'll keep it as the women's and then the men's.
Yep.
So we spoke earlier about the disappointments that we've had with the women's team this year. Can you very quickly run through the team listing?
Yeah, so Eels, as part of that doubleheader at Eric Tweedale, this is actually the first game at 12 o'clock p.m. in the Women's Premiership following at 2:30. They take on the New Zealand Warriors out on Sunday, and the Warriors coming off an absolutely trouncing victory over the North Queensland Cowboys. So one team's in form, at least on a short-term basis here. But the Eels, they have a couple of changes this week. We start at fullback, though. No change. Abby Church, who's still been in terrific individual form, it must be said, Craig. The amount of try-saving tackles she's made and line breaks she's done offensively on her lonesome, it hasn't gone unnoticed. She's been in great form. And unfortunately, the rest of the team hasn't carried that kind of form through the year, but hopefully they can turn it around this week. On the wings, it's Zoe Fay and Martha Mattielli. Rowie Owen and Lindsay Tui round out what is actually an unchanged backline from the team that played on the weekend. We do have a change in the halves, though. Rose Beckett comes in at 5'8" to work alongside Rachel Pearson. Towie Hiku serving the first of a 2-week suspension for dangerous contact grade 3. In the front row, it's Elsie Albert, Tanika Todd-Hunter, and Riverly Arlaw. Fontaine Tafunga, Mahalia Murphy, and Keely Joseph in the back row. Keely, of course, making her club debut. So really keen to see how she goes. On the bench, Ruben Charrington reverts to the dummy half utility role there, joined by Tess McWilliams, Boss Kapua, and Kylea Gray. Extended roster for the Eels, Morrissey, Hertigan, Takarangi, and Fallon. Of note for the Warriors, Craig, and I'm not sure what their situation is in terms of coming back from injury, but we're struggling for form now halves, but they've got Gail Broughton on the reserves list and Mele Hufunga, devastating centre/ish back rower there. So I'm not sure if they're coming back from injury or not, but I sure would love our Eels have that luxury to have Hufunga and Broughton on the reserve list.
It certainly is a luxury. John, the first thing that jumps out is we're playing a bigger bench this week.
Yes, first time it's not double utility as well, so maybe that'll be a key factor for the Eels. Yeah,
and when we talk about utility, if we class Ruben Charrington as a utility, she's a bigger presence as a utility.
Has the ability to play lock forward as well as
like a genuine lock forward, not like a fill-in lock forward at a pinch. So I think we're probably strengthened a little bit off the bench. As I said, I'd probably like to see a couple of the women dropped back to the bench to play that strike role in Elsie and Mahalia. I think, John, that this, even though we're dealing with injuries and suspension in the halves, where I think the clock is counting with regard to Rachel. I think we need her to really step up this week, and by step up I mean really take the game by the scruff of the neck as a game manager. Now, you could equally argue that our forwards have been trampled over in the first few weeks, so it's pretty hard as a half to have any sort of positive impact if your pack isn't getting the job done in laying the platform through the middle. But she's the senior player. It's up to her to demand from her pack as well, because that's the job of the halfback. She says what she wants.
You lay down the law. You get people.
You lay down the law.
Yeah.
Yep. It doesn't matter who wears the C beside their name. The halfback is the dominant voice that's out there. Should always be the dominant voice that's out there, and never be afraid to demand from the other players or rip in to the other players. That's exactly who they have to be. So, John, we'll get into the tip for this. We'll go as we do with the NRL. I want to be able to tip the Eels, and I could maybe try to look to, okay, the Warriors having to travel. They're not at a big stadium. They're at Granville Park, so they haven't got their big crowd behind them. Maybe they might be overconfident against the Eels. I'm looking for all of these sorts of things. The Eels have Keely Joseph back in. I'll tell you what I will do, what I'm prepared to do this week, because it would look ridiculous tipping an Eels win given the first 3 weeks, and especially against a New Zealand Warriors team who are a very, very strong team. But I'm going to go without making a tip in this and just say the Eels will improve a bit this week. I'm expecting an improved performance from the team. And I'll go for best on field to be Keely Joseph in a return match, and the first try scorer to be Rose Beckett.
Yeah, look, there's some pessimistic outlooks in chat about this game, and I really understand where people are coming from. You look at the Warriors' form line; they're 2-1, big win over the Bulldogs, then got trampled by the Raiders, and then a really big win over the Cowboys. So they've gone win-loss-win. So what you can hope is that form line holds true and it goes win-loss, win-loss. But the reality is that any team that's playing remotely competent football right now is well and truly ahead of our girls. And that sucks to say that, because there's clearly some talent in this squad regardless of the issues. What I will say is you need to see, as you said, Craig, fundamental improvements across the park. That goes on both sides of the ball, but especially defense. There has to be attempts of line speed. So it means you can't just take 2 steps and then start fanning out. You got to make your 3 or 4 steps up, get 3 or 4 meters up, and then start asking questions of the offense with your defense. I think there needs to be a better game plan to get their game breakers into the mix. You've got players like Rory Owen, Marf Mattielli, even Lindsay Tui, that need to be featured better. And obviously being deprived of the ball the way they have in the first 3 weeks has not aided their quest to get said playmakers in the mix. And, of course, Abby Church, one of those players as well.
Yeah, just create a bit more space for Abby.
Yeah.
As well, where she's having to create the space for herself.
All her stuff is getting out of dummy half and just finding a seam to attack him behind the rock. And she's doing really good in that role, but she can do that and also feature out wide. So, yeah, they really – there's any number of areas and phases in which you can point out they can improve with. I think defensively is the one area that is a non-negotiable this week. I think defensively they have to improve their line speed, their first up contact, their cover defense. Like they're just all those areas. I don't know how much they can do it on a week by week basis, but Keely Joseph will show up the middle a bit. I think that's a big in there. Just need to see improvement. And I've seen some pretty hefty scorelines being tipped in chat by way of the Warriors' victory here. I understand why. I think that's a very realistic outcome, unfortunately. But the reality for our girls is they've just got to turn it around bit by bit, starting with some genuine elbow grease in defense.
Yeah. I just think they've got to take the game to their opponents. They've been so much on the back foot, and I'm trying to think of the right word to use in this regard. Every week their opponents have dictated how the match is going to go, and almost from the opening whistle.
By virtue of their own lapses as well, with not catching kickoffs and giving away penalties and whatnot, that certainly added to a lack of the terminology for it. But like you said, not being able to declare yourself in the contest, or not being able to dictate terms. That's absolutely, like, you cannot have 9 or 12 repeat sets against you because of penalties and conceding tries and getting things wrong in all phases. So it's non-negotiable in that regard. And if they do that,
they've almost been passive in both.
Absolutely, incredibly passive. Which is why I was highlighting the line speed, because if you watch them, they're taking 2 steps off the line and then just starting to their slide fan protocols, and it just means that the opposition are carving out 12, 15 minutes of carry. Like the Titans were killing them on the ground because there was no line speed. And I know it's hard when you're fatigued and you're not getting the ball, but that's when you have to dig in even harder. So, that's where I'm at for that game. And if they do that, maybe they can get close to an upset. Who knows? But I understand.
Your first try scorer and predicted best on field, John, for the Eels?
I called out a trio of players there in Owen, Mateoli, and Tui. I suppose Abby as well, but it's hard to go past Owen. If the Eels can spotlight her in the midfield, I think she can do some damage and get an early try. Best on field. I think you're right about Keeley, but I'll go somewhere else. I'll just go Abby, because she's playing her tail off, her backside off there, and if she gets a little bit more support, it's hard not to see her being among theirs best on field. So, that's where we're at with that one. So we go to the Jersey Flegg, I guess, now.
Jersey Flegg, we'll go Jersey Flegg, yep.
Yeah, interesting team list in the Jersey Flegg. Where have we got it? Here it is. So some players dropping back from Cup this week, which in and of itself I find interesting because, again, I talked about that potential slight divorce of vision versus execution, Craig. There's an expectation based on what the coach has given us that you need to play 50 to 60 games to be ready for NRL. But we're seeing players getting dropped back to Flegg. And part of that is load management. Like, it's not as simple as just play them in Cup. But it does feel like you're seeing a sort of, say one thing, do another thing, which means that this week in Flegg you got players like Lincoln Fletcher and Zach Visconti dropping back. So I'll go through the full team, though. This game takes place on Friday, 6:30 p.m. out at the James Hardie Centre of Excellence. This is a double header, believe it or not. The New South Wales Cup. I had to do a double check. I was like, is there a public holiday on Friday? Because New South Wales Cup is listed at 4 o'clock, I think it is, or 4:30. So
4:30, yeah.
Yeah, odd time for the full time or the open age players to be playing football. So we'll maybe get some clarity on that from Chris. I'm not sure what the scheduling from that was, but for the Eels though, it's Nathan Howlett at fullback. Larima Rockers.
You know what it probably is? The Flegg are young players at work, school, gives them time to actually get there.
Yeah, but wouldn't a fair chunk of the Cup players also have secondary jobs?
Part-timers, yeah. They tend to be able to be a little bit more flexible, I think, for things like being available for training through the week and that sort of thing. So that would be my guess, is that it's maybe the time impacts the younger players more than the older ones in terms of being there early. So anyway, that I might be well off the mark, mate.
I mean, it makes sense, but there's also stuff outside of club's control about stadia availability and whatnot. So but Eels taking on the Panthers, 6:30 p.m. Penrith. Where are Penrith in this, Greg? Because I know they're first in Cup.
I think they're up right near the top in this as well.
Yeah, because Penrith have sort of fluctuated a little bit in Jersey Flegg and Cup last few years. They are third here. 10 wins, 1 draw, 4 losses. They haven't been bad by any means, but nowhere near as dominant as that golden age run they had a few years back. But they're certainly back up the top this year with leading the minor premiership race in Cup and third in the Flegg here. But for the Eels, got Rokasuka and Taula on the wings, Dakota Kikoi and Harley Walker in the centres. Iwani Lui's back. He's been pretty handy when he's been available, but has been banged up this year. A recruit from Melbourne for the Eels in the halves. He's working alongside Lincoln Fletcher, who I know that there is personnel reasons for why he's bumped back, Craig. I'm a little bit disappointed because I thought he was Not a bad showing in his cup debut, considering how bad the Sporting cast around him was against the Roosters. I'm sure we can talk about that shortly. In the front row, Salmaki and Jordan Miller are your front row pairing. Good to see Geordie back from a suspension. He's obviously a massive in. The dummy halves get flipped this week. Lachlan Koinaka starting with Jack Hudson back to the bench. On the edges, it's Trace Beattie and Chris Petrus. Zach Visconti dropping back from cup to play lock forward. Joining Hudson on the bench is Callum McMenemy, Wesley Tongamoa, Steve Nunn, and then the 18th man, Sterling Fa'amui. Tongamoa and Hudson on the bench is interesting because that is two dummy halves. I know that Wesley can play a little bit of small ball lock forward as well, and obviously Koinakis can also play lock forward, but as it stands, I'm a little bit surprised by that bench configuration. But Eels, they had a terrible first half against the Panthers, the Roosters, before they went to that bye. They nearly gunned them down, but gave away far too big of a handicap to overcome that deficit. And they're still very much in finals contention, Craig, but they've got to win and win quickly now.
Yeah. It's where's Cam Bamblett?
He was named to play in round 19, but was a late withdrawal from the team list. So I'm not sure if he's nicked himself up at training or got a recurred injury there. But he was meant to play against the Roosters in Flegg, but was a withdrawal and has not been spotted in the team list this week. And unfortunately, we're not privy to lower grade injury reports, so not really sure what's going on with one of the more talented prospects for the Eels there in Cam Bamblett.
Yeah. John, don't mind the halves pairing this week. You've got some big units starting the game at props. Samaki and Jordan Miller. I doubt there'd be a bigger prop pairing in Jersey Flegg than those two together. The talent's there. Let's just cut to the chase. The talent is there in this team to get the job done against the Panthers. How will they perform? Honestly, I don't know, John. That's been the tough thing, is their fluctuating form, not only across the season, but even within games. Last week being the perfect example, just a horror first half, and then seemingly putting it all together in the second half, only just then to let it get away with an error.
Too big of a task, yep.
Yeah, but they put themselves into a position to have a late strike, and then what was it? I think it was a drop from the hit up from the kickoff when they were within 6 points of reeling in that huge lead. So very, very difficult to predict how they're going to perform. It's a big in having Lincoln Fletcher there, but likewise it's a big out not having Cam Bamblett in the team. I always like having Jordan Miller in the team because the damage that he can do through the middle.
Interesting decision for the club with Jordan Miller moving forwards too. I feel like it's at least one of not NRL development deal, but a development deal in the context of being a second-year contract. It seems like a no-brainer if we can just keep him on that track to put himself in first-grade contention 18 months down the track. I would like to see him stick around. He's been very good for the Flegg, and wasn't out of his element playing cup for the brief opportunity he got this year before he got injured. But there is no doubt he makes a massive difference to this Flegg team. Like he truly gives them a foothold in the middle.
Yeah, I think he's one of those blokes who this next pre-season is going to be critical to him because he's on a journey to the sort of match fitness that he's going to need, and he's still away from that at the moment. And a really strong pre-season on the back of where he worked hard to drop the amount of weight that he did in the last pre-season is going to be critical to him. So hopefully they keep him in their in the system there. John, again, this is a game where I just want to say, you know what? I'm just going to watch this without making a tip, because it's one of those ones where the head says something, the heart says something else. I honestly believe that playing to the best of their ability, that they're a chance, but that becomes another matter entirely about whether they can do that. So I won't give a tip, but I will give. I will say to you that I think they will give the Panthers a run for their money.
Yeah,
that's all I'll say.
They're vastly.
At some stage, we'll look like we're a chance of winning the game.
Yes. Can they do it for enough of a run to actually win the game is the question, obviously. Look, big ins this week. Fletcher, Miller, Visconti as well. He's been excellent this year, both across Cup and Flegg. That's a real strike, not just a strike player, but a hard worker that gives him strike equally in the red zone too. He's been excellent for the Eels. Great pickup from North Sydney / the Roosters. But I do find myself sort of looking at that Fletcher inclusion, and he's got a point to prove this week. He was dropped from Cup, and if that is to make way for Jonah Pezzett. But there's a conversation to be had about how much does the club prioritise Jonah Pezzett's inclusion in Cup now. He's not at the club next year. We've got now this benchmark figure of 50 games that players need to be pushing for. So should we be getting Fletcher back into the Cup consideration? I'm sure we can talk about that through the remaining 2 months or just under 2 months of NRL football and Cup football left. But yeah, I think that they'll be stinging from dropping a game they should have won against the Roosters. Coming out the bye always concerns me, because I feel like the Flegg don't always come out the bye fired up. It's just like one of those logistical things about how coaches have to manage that simmering period that not everyone does to the greatest of our ability. It's just not easy. So I'm going to tip him to win this one on the strength of those three inclusions in particular: Fletcher, Miller, and Visconti. But also good to see Steve Nunn back, Craig. Incumbent Australian schoolboy as of last week. So that's a big in there on the bench. And here's another player that I think it's a real long shot to expect Steve Nunn to be playing Cup at any point this year. But there's still progressions he can make this season heading into the 2026-27 preseason. So good to see him back, and I'm hoping that the Flegg can actually turn things around, starting with a big win against the Panthers on Friday night.
Yes. Okay, that now takes us to New South Wales Cup.
Yes.
Can you go through the team there, because there's some interesting selections, especially in relation to Jersey Flegg as well.
Yes, and look, the Cup's usually the curtain raiser to the NRL, not often the curtain raiser to the Jersey Flegg, but we have mentioned that there is the inversion of the time slots this week because of the young players in Flegg needing a bit more time to get out to the venue, which means Cup will play at 4:30 p.m. at the Centre of Excellence, the COE, on Friday afternoon. For the Eels, they weren't good last game, Craig. They were the inverse proportion to good against the Roosters. They got 50'd, and I think only a couple of the young players really put their hands up for any sort of effort, to be honest. So they're going to be looking for a big bounce-back effort. Not necessarily a win, because they're taking on the presumptive minor premiers right now, or provisional minor premiers in the Penrith Panthers, but they can get up for a big Western Sydney derby here. And at fullback, you got Brad Avery. On the wings, it's Jake Tungor and Devontae Vivella. Siamani Leilua is in the number 3 with Will Penasini in the 4. It's really good to see Will back. He's been out since round 9. Obviously getting the rehab assignment here in Cup with, I would assume, 40-ish minutes, maybe the whole game, who knows, before he looks to come back to the NRL in rounds 22 to 23, with the halves pairing of Lorenzo Talataina and Jonah Pezzett steering the team around. Ryder Talangi, Riley Smith, and Max Tupou, your starting front rowers and dummy half. In the back row, Tyrese Lakini, Josiah Funarayuta, and Saxon Pryke. On the interchange, Cruz Natili Schmidt, Damascus Nemia, Jackson Coyner, and Max Fumiano Popo. And it is of note, Jackson Coyner's Cup debut for the Parramatta Eels. So big milestone game for him, going alongside Lincoln Fletcher making his Cup debut last week. And then the player on the bench with him, Max Popo, I think it's his, fourth Cup cap now. So it's a lot of young talent in this squad. But they, as a team, need to really pull things together, because they were very ordinary against the Roosters. And I know that they missed some tackles, but I thought that Talataina and Fletcher were two of the players that actually, tried to rally the team in that game, but just the support wasn't there. It's it is a bit of a concern, Brad Avery at fullback again, Craig. I thought he's struggled with the role this year. And I thought against the Roosters, it got real bad. I don't know who you play there in spite of him. Cam Bamber's not available, so that's probably a big one there. But, yeah, it's that's a big one for mine there, is that you really need to see a vastly improved performance from Brad at fullback there, because it was pretty bad against the Roosters. But across the park again, it feels really unfair to just single out Avery, because he's not Robinson Crusoe in that regard. There needs to be significantly improved efforts, in particular in defence.
To be fair to Brad too, he's not a full-time footballer. And there are players in that team that are full-time footballers on NRL contracts who you can maybe say, look, are we getting the best performance out of them? Or if they're not on NRL contracts, then they're still on a full-time arrangement as a supplementary player. So it's the thing is, John, that the effort levels have been way too inconsistent with the team. They've definitely suffered from the injury woes that the squad itself has suffered. So, which means that you get players in there who aren't full-time players. So you're talking about Avery, you're talking about Luai, and Max Tupu, Cruz Natili Schmidt, Damascus Nemia, Max Popo. Right, these are blokes that they might be either running around from an age perspective, either in Jersey Flegg, or if they've already aged out, for Wenty in Ron Massey Cup. So I think it's a lot to. For mine, there are too many players in the team who aren't full-time footballers. I'm not pointing a finger at them and criticising them. I'm just saying there's too many players there who aren't full-time footballers. And in an ideal world, when you've got an NRL squad of 30, then you've got your 5 or 6 development players, and then you've probably got another 4 or 5 or 6 supplementary list players who are full-timers as well. To have that many players having to be used in New South Wales Cup tells you just where we're at in terms of injuries. So, yeah, John, but that's still no excuse for some of the efforts that we've seen this year and the inconsistency. If we go back a few weeks ago, I think it's about 3 weeks ago, when they played Manly and really did a number on Manly, and we had some really strong performances in that game. And from memory, like Riley Smith was outstanding in that game. I thought it was one of the best games that I'd seen Max Tupu have. Tyrese and Josiah were really, really strong in that game. So that game was really one where, look, Manly have been on a long losing streak anyway, so Parramatta would have been favoured to win that. But they did the job the way they needed to. They laid a strong platform through the middle. It seems to me, John, that what happens with this team is there's been many occasions where they've been well and truly in the contest up to around half-time or just after half-time. Sounds a bit familiar, doesn't it? And then things fall apart in the second half, like really badly. And when they've fallen apart badly, they've had like 40, 50 points put on them at a time. So I think we just need to see a bit more resilience. And whether it's simply a matter of you can't expect part-time players to compete with full-time players, and it becomes as simple as that, that's understandable. But you'd still like to see just a little bit more resilience from them.
Look, they get some class back this week. Jonah Pezzett, obviously, very talented half of the grade. and Will Pennicini obviously a massive in the back line. Although I do think there is a conversation to be had about prioritising 2027 over 2026 for reserve grade, and that might mean putting Pezzett on the 6-man bench or the reserves in the NRL if you're being incredibly pragmatic and bringing Fletcher in there. But again, the club's also chasing finals in the Jersey Flegg, and there's mixed messages about do you want competition-based results or you want development-based results? But the team's better this week, there's no doubt. Is it going to be good enough to challenge the provisional minor premiers? That is a question of effort and execution. And based on recent form, like they clowned on Manly, which most teams have done this year. But based on what we saw against the Roosters, I think they're in for a long day. I hope that's not the case. I really hope it's not the case because there's talent in this team, but you can just feel that they're down on their luck, down on confidence.
John, this is another one where I don't really want to make a tip because I hate tipping against my own team in this, this is going to be one of those games where I just hope what I see is a much improved effort on what was delivered against the Roosters. Let's jump now to the NRL preview and look for how we're going to defeat the Panthers again in first grade, where the Panthers are sitting right up the top of the table and the Eels are sitting down near the bottom of the table. I reckon we can find a way, John. I think we can do it. I think we can find a reason for some positivity. So I'll get you to run through the Eels, the two teams up against each other, position by position.
Sorry, up to the NRL now?
Yep.
Sorry, I was having a quick pop into chat there. Obviously this is the main event on Thursday night, Battle of the West, and it's I said all 5 grades when I was doing my blurb, but it's 4 grades against the Panthers and obviously the Warriors game. That they can be honorific Westies for this one, I guess. But for the Eels against the Panthers here, we've got the 7:50 p.m. kickoff on Thursday night at Combank. Panthers coming off a last start loss against the Broncos, Craig. So not like they needed any more motivation, but they're going to have it because unfortunately for the Eels, it's actually narrowed their grip on the provisional minor premiership in the first grade stakes. They're now only just 1 win ahead of the Warriors and the Roosters. So suddenly it's all to play for. So they're going to be looking to re-establish dominance and quick in that one there. So for the two teams, they line up like this. In the fullback roles, you've got Dylan Edwards, the bold maestro there for Penrith. There was some consideration he might have been in concussion protocols after getting that mean gash on the head, but he's been cleared to play, it looks like, with Isaiah Yongi for the Eels going up against him in the head-to-head. For the two teams on the wings, you've got Thomas Jenkins, Milky Jenkins, try-scoring phenom in 2026 with Brian To'o on the other flank for the Panthers, up against Parramatta's Brian Kelly and Josh Adokar. For the Eels, although Will Pennicini is a long shot to play here, I would expect him to probably run out with the 3 and 4 as advertised, which is Jordan Samrani and Raz Nanva. Paul Alamotti and Casey McQueen, the centre three-quarter pairing for the Panthers there in the opposite side of the docket. In the halves, we mentioned that Mitch Moses is back from that corked thigh. He's in the 7 with Ronald Volkman, in the 6, working alongside him. Former Parramatta Eels prospect Blaise Talangi. Well, not even prospect, he played first grade for us. Blaise Talangi working with Nathan Cleary in the opposite side there for the Panthers. Penrith, their front row looks like this. Moses Leota, Freddie Lussick and Lindsay Smith. Sam Tuavaiti getting another start. He'll be working with Talon De Silva and Jack Williams, 8, 9 and 10. For the Eels, unchanged back row as well. Kelma Tuolangi, Kitione Katonga and Jack DeBellin. Another former Eel there and Isaiah Papali'i in the 11 for the Panthers. Liam Martin, the menace that is Liam there in the 12. And then the outstanding ball-playing lock, Isaiah Yeo in the 13. And the captain, I believe, for the or co-captain at least for the Panthers. Benches for the two teams, Billy Scott, Scott Sorensen, Liam Henry, Billy Phillips, Isaac Tungle and Jack Cole for the visiting Panthers. For the Eels, it's Dylan Walker, Luca Moretti, Tiankan Brown, Harrison Edwards, Josh Papali, and Tony Matteelli. Then the reserves, Pezzett, Smith, and Pennicini, Edgar Fanua, and Leilua Going. Sione Fanua, another former Parramatta Eel there, who has found his feet at Penrith after being in the wilderness for a few years in rugby league terms. So good to see Sione thereabouts to the NRL.
People might remember him as Johnny Fanua.
He was Johnny Fanua, which that is the romanisation of Sione for the Pacifica boys there. So, yeah, Johnny was a really fun player to watch in our pathways. Talented, mercurial fullback. He had the odd error in him, but he could do some wonderful things. And
people might remember a trial that I think he played against Penrith. It was a televised trial, and I think he might have scored a try or was heavily involved in some attacking plays for Parramatta against Penrith in that one. But that's going back, man, that's going back some years. I might have been up at Penrith Park, a trial up there. So anyway, we move into the preview itself. Last up winners, John, up against last up losers.
No.
Wasn't our last up a win over the Sea Eagles?
If you forget that we played the Roosters, I guess.
Oh, geez, John, here I am. I'm so focused on a win.
Repressing all the bad memories.
Oh, mate, scrap that.
It's two teams looking for bounce back wins. Yeah.
How did I forget?
To be fair, the Eels showed plenty of character in that loss to the Roosters. Had a self-inflicted stuff, had some official questionable calls, I guess, but Roosters too good at the end of the day. But the two teams last start losers, and that's the concern for me, is that the Brisbane Broncos finally somewhat healthy ambushed the Panthers last week at Combank Stadium, and it's loosened their grip. They're still in the box seat to take out the minor premiership and have top seed through the finals, Craig, but it has just opened the door for either of the Warriors or the Roosters to steal a march on Penrith, and they're not going to like that. So it does mean that the Eels are going to be up against an even more motivated Penrith Panthers than usual. Look, these two teams met, back in round 8, was it? When did we play the Panthers? We played them... No, it was round 4. It was half of that. So Panthers ended up 48. Panthers ended up winning 48-20. So they put a score on us. But of note then was the fact that the Eels got 20 points on Penrith at a time when their defense was giving away like 8 points a game or something like that. So the Eels showed that they had the capacity to ask questions of Penrith. But as we saw throughout the course of the season, as it truly manifested in devastating full detail, was that the Eels had the lack of ability to stay composed, and we saw that really come to the fore with losses to the Titans and the Warriors and whatnot in preceding weeks, and the Melbourne Storm loss in round 11 in particular. So the question is how much have the Eels learnt from not just that loss, but any number of losses since then, about the importance of holding onto the ball and the importance of not having untimely errors. And based on what we've seen, probably not enough, which is unfortunate. Because I think the defense they showed against the Roosters and the full consideration of the all the moving parts in that, with a lot of tough calls going against you, some self-inflicted errors, I thought the defensive effort was outstanding against the Tricolours. And if they bring that same energy against Penrith, the Panthers are going to score on you because they're just too good of an outfit. They're going to score, but you're going to be able to restrict them to a total that you could feasibly compete against. But can they bring the other side of the equation into, fruition? Can they be a factor in offense? Can they complete at 80+%? Can they move the ball around and be a legitimate, challenge to the presumptive minor premiers?
John, if it's not bad enough that you have to remind me that we were last up losers, when my entire mindset was based on we beat Manly.
Happy Gilmore, happy place.
We just beat Manly.
Go to your happy place. Happy place.
That's it. So a couple of the points that you raised, I've been banging on about completions all year. And when the Eels complete above 80%, they win. They've won once with a completion in the 70s, but they've had completions that have been down in the 60s, and even had that game where they completed it, 38% in the second half, something absurd like that. I can't even remember who the opponent was. It didn't matter. We lost. It was just, for me, it begins and ends there. If we're going to turn over possession to the Panthers, it's going to get ugly.
Oh, yeah.
If we can complete sets and apply unexpected scoreboard pressure, then maybe we can get a different sort of outcome. And whether it's anywhere near enough to be able to get a win against a strong team like the Panthers, who can say? But it has to begin and end with completing the sets, getting a good kick and good kick chase at the end of each set. And if you get possession in the opposing red zone, don't throw it away. Ask some questions, but stay focused. Stay focused on what you have to do and come up with some decent last tackle options as well. There are opportunities against the Panthers in their losses this year. You could probably pick out with each one of the losses that Blaze has struggled defensively and McLean has struggled defensively. So over that side of the field, there's an opportunity there. It's whether it's a combination issue, whether it's an individual player issue, doesn't matter. You can ask questions over that side of the field, but the Eels have to be like, I keep coming back to it. If you're gonna provide the Panthers with the possession, you're going to pay the price. Because as you said, John, are you going to be able to hold out the Panthers? No. They will score points. Last week, the conditions that they played the Broncos in, I think really helped to bring the Broncos into the game. Those wet sort of conditions, I think it blunted the Panthers' attack a little bit more. And the Broncos had some miracle hands at different points. So, and when you got someone like Reece Walsh,
getting 90 touches in the game
off their ankle, he was just so dialed in. Last year we saw him do his best impression of 2009 Jared Hayne, and he captured that in one game last week. Whether he can go on with it week on week for the Broncos remains to be seen, but he was really instrumental in the Broncos getting that win last week. And as I said, I think the weather conditions prevailed as well for who came out advantageous for the Panthers last week. I don't think the Panthers are invincible. They've not they've had 4 losses this year. So
but when they've been bad,
they've been
bad. Like that's the thing with Penrith this year. When they've been off, they've been way off.
Like that game against the Bulldogs earlier this year, they were atrocious in that game.
There was another game. I was talking to my brother about this because we were just shooting the shit about football coming into this week. And where are Penrith's draws? Because the Bulldogs one was by far and away their worst performance, no doubt. But they are also pretty mid against. They squeaked out a win against the Dolphins, who obviously are a pretty good outfit in general. But they struggled against Manly, 18-6 winners there. They struggled against the Warriors, who are obviously a good team, but got beaten by the Gold Coast Titans 19-18 and beaten by the Cowboys 26-12. So, when they've been off, they've been a ways off in terms of obviously the end result, but especially if you watch the game itself, they've been well off from their best. And that degree of variance is probably what separates them from their four-peat selves, where they were metronomically efficient every week. It didn't make a difference if they had 8 players out because of Origin. They would absolutely just pound you through the middle, score on you regardless. So if you can get them off, I think there's an opportunity to spring an ambush or at least get close to spring an ambush. But my concern is, of course, they got pants last week by the Brisbane. So the odds of them being off this week, it goes from that about that.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that whilst I think we have the strike power with someone like Kelmer asking questions against Blaze and McLean, likewise they could ask some pretty strong questions about Kelmer.
Yeah,
because you're talking about two players with great footwork and great balance in how they run. So we have to defend so well on that side of the field. It could well be that the Eels right and the Panthers left sides, whoever performs better out of those two sides will go a long way towards determining the result of this. I'm expecting a really strong performance from Mitch Moses this week because he's up against his Origin teammate in Cleary. The Eels have traditionally performed reasonably well against the Panthers. We've probably asked more questions of the Panthers in recent times than a lot of other clubs have managed to do. We went through that period when BA was coaching where we were winning the regular season games, just couldn't get it done in the finals games. But even when we've lost, there's been times where we've looked, apart from earlier this year, where we've looked like we're in with a chance to win, take out finals games, obviously, because they really did a number on us in the finals. But that crazy game in 24 when Trent Barrett was coaching and we got out to that huge lead and then the Panthers ran us down in like the last 7 or 8 minutes. I mean, that was a freakish game. But again, the Eels were able to put the points on the Panthers. Something that we seem to be able to do reasonably well is to score points. So, John, I think, as I said, I'd like us to just be as focused as we possibly can, complete the sets, get high completion rate. I don't care if we're not. No, you know what? We are going to have to score points. So I don't care if we concede some points, as long as we don't concede so many that we can't reel it back. Like, we have to accept we're going to concede points to the Panthers, but we've just got to be. We won't concede as many if we can get those completions up. Get the completions above 80%. I'm going to keep coming back to
it. I think the realistic outlook here is that Penrith are probably going to win. Like, they're provisional minor premiers. They've looking at the season sweep for the Eels here. Obviously, we want to see the Eels get the ambush, but I think there's a lot to be gained short of a win anyway for Parramatta about being competitive, getting a grip on their handling and the composure to be able to, again, dot the I's and cross the T's. And it is reductive to talk about a game like this as synthesized down to complete your sets and hold on to the ball. But that's where the Eels are at, is that we don't really know how good or bad we have a pretty good idea of how bad the Eels can be, unfortunately. We don't know how good the Eels can be in their present iteration with all the injuries and guys out of form and connections that have been scrambled because of suspension and particular injuries, because they can't consistently hold on to the ball. So up against the best this week, it is while it's not a short turnaround because they're off the bye, it's a short preparation phase in the week itself. Can they find that degree of consistency that they have not had throughout essentially the entirety of season 2026? I think that's the challenge from this week. And if you can do that, other things start to become more feasible. Like, you can talk about the upset if the Eels are completing their sets, if they hold on to the football. You're not beating Penrith if you're completing at 70%. Yeah,
exactly. So, John, I'm going to do the tip with the head, tip with the heart for this. If I'm tipping with the head on this, the Panthers get this by about 18 to 20 points. So maybe a score line, something like 38 to 18, something like that. That's tipping with the head. Tipping with the heart, and Parramatta completing at 80% or above, I'll go for a 28-24 victory to the Eels. Again, relatively high scoring. My best on field this week, I'll go for Talon De Silva to have a blinder at dummy half and to dictate exactly what happens out there on the park. And for first try scorer for Parramatta, I'll go with Isaiah Iongi against his old team. Yourself?
Yeah, look, there is obviously two very clear lines of tipping here, isn't there? With the head, where it says that Penrith are going to be incredibly fired up for this one. They got ambushed by the Broncos. And it was an upset, but obviously Brisbane's relative talent, being reigning minor premiers without losing anyone of note, that roster can absolutely challenge anyone. But the form line says that they shouldn't have beaten the Panthers. So they're going to be really keen to bounce back from that one. It's going to probably inspire them to be extra clinical as a team that is usually pretty clinical in general. So I think that realistically, Penrith probably win and win pretty well. No need to tip a scoreline there in that regard. But going with the heart here, if the Eels are able to do the things that we've spoken about, able to complete relatively efficiently and able to, actually have a semblance of both structure and secondary phase football where they can play out of structure and unlock some of their weapons out wide, then there is a path to victory as narrow and slender as it looks this far out. So in that vein, the narrow path to victory sees the Parramatta Eels winning 21-20. Mitchell Moses field goal to split the difference there. First try scorer for the Eels. Did you say the Fox? Well, no, you said a Yongi. I'll go the Fox. Best on field, I will go, and he showed some good signs in recent weeks, and it's a guy I've been, some might suggest unduly critical of in Jack Williams. I'll go Jack Williams to be best on field because he obviously has a great game himself, but that battery of him and Tuivasa gets unlocked a little bit this week. So that's how I'm going to go with my tips.
Now, couldn't we get quick response from chat? Is there anybody who gives the Eels a genuine chance in chat?
I know Jim's not big on our odds here, and I understand why. We've sort of alluded to the why of Penrith being heavy favourites. Jet says Eels 26, Penrith 16. I will take a 10-point win, Jet. I like that. That's the kind of optimism I'm here for, brother. Who else we got here? Phil says the Fox is due a try. He hasn't scored in a while. Yes, that's where my tip comes from, is that he's been close, nearly got one in against the Roosters, put his foot in the sideline. It was clearly on the sideline, but it was a good movement from the Eels that just couldn't come to fruition. But yeah, he's overdue, and he's battled hard for the Eels this year through that rib injury, and he's starting to round back into the kind of form we expect from the Fox. Chris is he's 13 plus. Okay, all right. I don't know if I can get in on that action, but I love the energy. Jetta says I'll take a 1-point win.
There'd be nice odds on that.
Yes. Peter says Para by 4 points. Gary's hoping for a fair game. He thinks the Eels can win if it's an even contest in that regard. Look, we haven't touched on the officiating because that's something you just deal with post-game and when you grumble.
Who's the ref this week?
Sutton is the main official, I believe. And where is the match centre? And did I see Klein in the box? It is Ashley Klein in the box, Gerard Sutton main whistle. Casey Badger's running on the sidelines, so expect forward passes to be called against Parramatta and maybe let go for the Panthers, but that's just us grumbling as fans. Tommy says Panthers by 8, depending on which Eel side shows up. Yeah, I mean, that if we lose by 8, I think that's a pretty reasonable showing by the Parramatta Eels. But yeah, look, it's Jim says tell 60s he's dreaming. He thinks that we can match the Penrith forwards. I mean, again, these are fair areas of criticism coming into the game. It is what it is. Like we're talking about a best case scenario for the Eels stepping up, and we saw, in saying that, we saw some, like the last 6 weeks, barring the South Sydney game, has been genuine defensive progression. Even the Roosters game, I know it blew out the 30 points at the end, but they had a ton of possession, a ton of calls, and it took them a long time to be able to peel away that Parramatta defense. So they've seen gains on one side of the football. If they can see, requisite gains on the other side when it comes to just completing and not being, absent-minded in getting through their sets, I think they can get closer to Penrith than people may initially anticipate. But look, it remains that Penrith are wild favourites here, and for good reason. We make a point of tipping with the head and tipping with the heart because of it. Penrith are absolutely wild favourites coming into this game on Thursday. But as Peter says, we live in eternal hope as Eels fans. You can't be a Parramatta fan and not have that element to you, can't you? Even a bitterly cynical Para fan has that little ember of hope because they stick around every year with this club that puts us through the washer year in, year out. So, yeah. I think, look, I'm not saying an upset's brewing, but I'm hopeful that they can be pretty competitive on Thursday night. I think Mitch is as fresh as he's going to be mid-season. He's coming off a great last start performance for New South Wales. I know his club form has been, fluctuational at best this year because of a number of factors. He's obviously been dinged up. The squad around him has been even more battered than he has been. But there's no doubt that he needs to take ownership of the team this week. And like you said, Craig, that head-to-head against Cleary, it could bring out the best of him. I think that's that's something to consider there. And even going back to that presser, it feels like he is locked in this week. So I'm hoping that what we saw in that presser and the shit that he's copped from the media because of it, that's just extra incentive for him to fire up this week.
Yeah. Okay. So let's now press on with the NRL news, John, because we've hit the 2-hour mark.
No, we've got 2.5 minutes spare for that. We've got plenty of time.
So look, have we got a result on Dewey and Fainu?
Dewey was successful in getting the overturn. Where is my notes here? So he got the downgrade. He is free to play. Now Fainu, has that come out yet? Judiciary here. I did see. I think we mentioned it last podcast, but I did see someone popping in to talk about Carl Lovell passing away, which I think we talked about last week, Greg, didn't we?
Yeah.
Obviously,
Sure.
terrible news.
Yeah.
Young man, not a little bit older than Scott Jura, obviously, but seeing them go young like that's always terrible. Where is do we have? So Dewey's free to play. I think Fainu is still pleading his case. Dave Fafita has lost his case and is out for 2 games. And I don't know about you, but what's your take on the Fainu tackle situation? Because on 360, the former players were mortified that he was getting a charge, and the journos were adamant that he should have got a charge. I
know what would have happened if they were Parramatta players. Number one, we wouldn't have won the downgrade like Dewey did because we don't. We just don't. And I wish I could come up with something that was more concrete in terms of the reasons why we don't, but it just seems to be even when we feel like we've got a good case that we can present, we're unsuccessful. So the majority of the times, i.e. 95% of the time, we just take the early plea. In this instance, the Tigers rolled the dice. They've come up trumps with Dewey. And to be honest, I was a little bit surprised. I thought there was pretty strong contact to the head there, but obviously there wasn't. And with regard to the Fainu tackle,
because Gordy and Astor were absolutely mortified that he copped anything, and I think there's a little bit more nuance to it because he did go low, which I have no issues with, but he didn't make a wrapping motion, so there is some negligence in terms of the tackling motion. A grade 3 dangerous contact charge or dangerous throw charge where he copped there is kind of crazy though.
Well, look, the way I look at it, John, is his reaction when it happened. His reaction when the tackle was affected was like, oh, shit.
Yeah, I get that, but there is also an element that you got to remember we're playing a collision sport, and at some point there are just football incidents where a guy's run really hard, a guy's gone really low, and that's caused the cartwheeling, catapulting action there.
Did I think that he contributed to the tackle? Who was the ball runner in that instance?
It was Leo Thompson.
Yeah. So did I think Leo Thompson contributed? Yes, I do. So I guess we'll see what happens when it's determined tonight. But that was going to have some implications because we're playing the Tigers
in next game, right? So.
Yep. Yeah, and just speaking of that, the game after that, moving on with the news, is we've got Cam Murray and Tallis Duncan, who are each predicted to be out for 3 weeks. Whether they come back early and they're only out for 2 weeks is another matter, but also you've got Latrell Mitchell, who's now a week-to-week proposition.
He's not. He's
so
now the talk late this evening was it's a season ender now.
yes,
So
yes. So
it's not looking good there. I mean, he's joined by another, more of a fullback these days than Latrell is, but Tom Trbojevic also in a similar boat. So mounting injuries for those boys. It's it's the rough end. I mean, Souths have had a pretty bad injury toll all year. Obviously not Parramatta bad, not Brisbane bad, but they've been up there. It's a pretty nasty blow to take at the business end of the season when they're trying to fight to stay in touch with the back end of the 8. So, look, they've done.
And speaking of, sorry, keep going.
I was like, they've done a good job persevering through it, but this might be too much. That's some serious firepower that they're missing now. Murray is obviously a genuine superstar. Duncan's an outstanding young player, and Latrell as much as his form oscillates when he's on, he's a genuine game breaker. So they're big outs. Yeah,
absolutely. And speaking of injuries, you had the big injuries to Hudson Young and Will Warbrick.
Achilles.
Both Achilles. And you know something about problems with Achilles, John.
Yeah, it's look, this is a really interesting one to talk about because I'm sure, there's far more nuanced takes from players, from individuals like NRL physio. But it does feel like, at least anecdotally, there's been an uptick in Achilles injuries recently, with maybe a downtick in anterior cruciate ligament injuries. Like, you still see ACLs, but the strike rate of ACLs it feels like, again, anecdotally, has fallen a bit while Achilles has gone up. And I was talking to my brother about this, who has a background in exercise physiology, so sort of adjacent to physiotherapy there. And it's always interesting talking about biomechanics in sports. And oftentimes when you see an adjustment to a specific area, like a way of dealing with mitigating injuries for like knees, the way biomechanics works is that you're going to see a payoff somewhere else. And are we seeing Achilles starting to rupture more frequently because we're better at preventing knee injuries now? Like, is that the biomechanical payoff? Or it could just be a complete coincidence, and more than likely it's a complete coincidence. But seeing these guys starting to rupture their Achilles, it sucks because ACLs used to be such a career dampener, if not ender, going back a decade plus. They've improved massively with their ability to rehabilitate from an ACL, but Achilles still sees a notable lack in explosive ability when you sustain a proper rupture, like near the base of the Achilles, where it tends to snap the ligament and cause that nasty little coil up. So, yeah, that's you were seeing that Xavier Coates has really struggled to come back from his Achilles, and to the point where he's been shut down for this season. And it does suck to see another couple of players in Hudson Young, who's enjoying it as much as Canberra struggled. Young's been fantastic this season, and Will Warbrick, who's off to the Warriors. Well, he's not going to get much of a preseason now. He's going to be out of action for a good portion to next year, like Hudson. So it really sucks. Hate to see it.
Yeah.
Hate to see it.
Yeah, you don't like to see players suffering from the sort of injuries that they are. And just quickly on coaching, Dean Young's got a 2-year coaching deal. That's probably a smart number, that 2 years with the Dragons. Give him time to prove himself before committing further than the 2 years. They have shown signs of improvement, the Dragons. I think they're still going to be anchored to the bottom of the table given who they're playing. But they have definitely shown signs of improvement. And reports that Anthony Seibold might land an assistant coaching role alongside Luke Burt to Willie Peters in PNG.
Yeah, a bit to unpack across those multiple points of news. Firstly, it's incredibly rare to see an interim coach emerge victorious in the coaching carousel / hunt for a new head coach. But we've seen it twice in the one season. Kieran Foran, obviously securing a long-term contract with Manly, 3 or 4 years there, and a more circumspect deal from the Dragons for Young, as you said there, Craig. Yeah, look, obviously the players rallied around Young. You always see the playing group rally around the interim coach. They do, right? It's part of the process when it comes to footy. They've improved a little bit. Still only gotten 2 wins on the season, and still having some struggles on a week-to-week basis. They've recruited very aggressively. That has them at least shaping to make short-term gains. I don't know what to make of the Dragons because, like Parramatta, there's a lot to deal with in their own backyard. They could be a team that makes a big jump next year. They could also just tread water. Drinkwater is he's a very talented player, but he's now 30 and is, again, a mercurial player. He has huge games, but also has some really poor games, at least in defense. So I think
no criticism for signing Connor Watson for 1 year.
Well, they escaped all the criticism of that, isn't it? It's funny. It was a point made in my footy chat I have that if the roles are reversed and it was the Eels where the Dragons are now, even with the recruitment that the Eels would have made in those three, could you imagine the the back page headlines of how bad the Eels are going, every day, every week? If we'd only won 2 games and we're getting pants the way the Dragons have gotten pants this year. So yeah, there are different standards when it comes to the NRL media cover things. It just is what it is. So yeah, on that coaching front, interesting. Dragons making a very safe bet. Like, that is not anywhere near going all in on Young, but also gives them some flexibility to watch the market. And then contrasting appointments from the Chiefs. Seabold maybe just works better as an assistant. I don't know, but it feels like he's probably out of lives when it comes to being an NRL head coach. I would be surprised if he lands another gig, but you never know. Bert Starr, I mean, we got a lot of time for Luke Burt, obviously former Parramatta legend of the 2000s era, and should have been a grand final winner for the Eels again. It is what it is there. But he was great as a flag coach for the Eels, joined the Titans, got lost in the big reshuffle that they've gone through with multiple coaches sort of putting him on the back burner. I think he had to take up an administrative job at one point at the Titans. Yeah. And his star was firmly on the ascent at one point, but then it started to wane. But I like that appointment for the Chiefs. I think that's a good, young, energetic appointment as an assistant coach. I think it gives him.
Well, he won the Q Cup last year, didn't he?
Yes, he got the squad through to the national championship game. Yeah, so Bertie Starr's firmly back on the rise, which is great to see. He gets now a chance to be in a prominent role for an expansion franchise that's going to have some exciting signings. Like, they're going to be doing some interesting things up at PNG. So I like that. Don't really know what to make of the Seabold appointment. Like, I suppose he gets some experience, because that's otherwise it's a very inexperienced coaching staff. Because at least in terms of NRL, because what's his name coming from the ESL has got no NRL experience. So there is some trickiness to navigate with the long NRL season, and I guess Seabold provides some insights there to help him.
And John, just to finish things off, you touched on it before with Turbo with the injury. And I was looking at this week with the old schooner of reality to finish off.
Shout out to Jamie for this one.
Get the schooner of reality there, the TCT schooner of reality there. Has Manly hit exactly what we expected was going to happen with them, just with a couple of injuries?
Yeah, look, we've pointed out this year they're a very top-heavy side. Their cup team is genuinely diabolical. Like, it's a legendary bad run for them in cup. They haven't been called to, tasked to call upon the talent in that squad too much, which is a good thing. But now the injuries are starting to just add up here and there. And also, as we mentioned, it's just the first bit of adversity that they've faced for a young coach, for a rookie coach. And I do want to stress that Kieran Foran may end up being an outstanding coach. But like Jason Riles, you get to your first road bump in first grade as a coach, and it's not easy. Like, suddenly players that were making things happen and always catching the ball and creating half opportunities and turning them into full opportunities, it stops working because your team is slightly out of sync or the opposition have tightened up a bit. And you have to deal with that adversity in different ways. There is no one way to solve it. Otherwise, you'd never change coaches. It'd be 18, 19, and eventually 20 NRL coaches just locked in. And Manly, they're not getting blown off the park by any means, but you can see in their performances that it's not where they were 6 weeks ago. And the bounce of the ball, the flow of the game, their ability to consistently win all the little moments in a given contest, it's the tide's turned the other way now. And that is football. And that's why it was always fascinating to see the media. And look, the media has a vested interest in crowning someone like Foran instantly, because it's a great storyline, and they get the reap the benefits later of cutting him down once he starts struggling. So that is literally it is the very definition of tall poppy syndrome from the media. And Foran is being saved aggressive criticism right now because Manly is still in the hunt for the 8. But we made a call on the 8 last week, Craig, and the way Manly were trending, I think we had them both missing. And since then, they lost their game against, who did they play? The Cowboys? Who were they playing on the weekend? Manly lost against the Titans. Yeah, the Titans, not the Cowboys. I knew it was a Queensland team, but not the Titans. So, yeah, like, Schooner Rowdy is very legit here. They're dealing with their first block of adversity in a long time. Well, since Seabold got the Rissole, so not that long, but long in the context of a season. And they're struggling. And Tommy's been shut down for the season now, which may be a net benefit for them because there is some genuine Patrick Ewing theory there with Tom Tebojevic, where Ewing being a star, I think centre in the NBA. Did he play for Houston? Who was the team he played for? Chat might know this one. But it's a theory that essentially that when you have the superstar out, he was Knicks and Thunder and then Magic. There you go. When you have a genuine superstar player out, the rest of the team lift and replace him in the aggregate to even better than the player himself was. And his teams would play better without him than when he was in there, even though he was recognised as a legit all-time superstar. So I thought Manly were probably better when Tom was out earlier this year. And that might be something that helps him rally around him being out and lifting for him. So it'll be interesting to see if the Ewing theory is in practice here for Manly. But look, they're struggling, and they now find themselves. Where is the 8? They're now a full win behind the Cowboys. Their for and against is better than most teams ahead of them in the back end of the 8. So they got that in their advantage. But the reality is they're not winning, and
no. They were in a cushy position. They've only won one of their last 5.
That's right. They had you talked about NRLW giving the gift wrapped draw and then making a meal of it. They were in a similar position late in the season. They'd done all the hard work and put themselves deep into the 8 and had a chance to completely shut out chasers and consolidate and be almost untouchable. And instead they fumbled and bumbled and put themselves a win behind the 8th place Cowboys. And now, did I just pick I did pick the wrong team there. I am silly. That's like muscle memory picking the Eels. But now they've got Cronulla, Melbourne and Perth actually, the Dolphins, the Knights, the Dragons and the Warriors. So of those games, the Dragons you would presume is close to a gimme. Again, no game is a gimme in the NRL, but that's as close as it gets. A true bottom ranked team up against them in a home venue at Four Pines. But you got to go across the nation to play Melbourne, who was the other weaker matchup there. And then you've got contender in the Sharks, contender in the Dolphins, pretty much a contender in the Knights, and then a big dog contender in the Warriors. So that maybe they need the challenge. Maybe they'll rise to it. But geez, they've got gone from a cushy run.
I look at that and I see 2 probable wins and a bye, which would then have them finishing on, 28 points, which isn't going to be enough.
And they've got the benefit of good for and against right now, so they can leverage that as a tie-breaking scenario if they can eke out another win or two. But where the win's going to come from, and like maybe they jag a win against Cronulla or the Dolphins, but just as liable to drop a game against Melbourne or even the Dragons. Like that's where they are right now if they're form line. Like I think project them as 2 wins there is not unreasonable. 2, maybe 3 wins, and that puts them really on the cusp of the 8, with other teams probably enjoying better runs home.
Yeah. So we're both going to say both prepared to put a line through Manly.
Yeah, I had them outside the 8 last week, and they lost the Titans, so I think so. And the only thing I think that saves them maybe is again Patrick Ewing theory. That with Tom out, that the rest of the team plays better, and they might be better with someone like Cooler at fullback these days too, where Tom's been a bit of an odd fit for the team this year. He hasn't quite been near full fitness and has been a bit disjointed in his deployment across the park for him. So maybe they just play better, but even then, it's a tough draw.
Yeah. So, John, I think we're just about ready to pull up stumps on this podcast. Any late breaking news or anything you want to cover before we wrap things up?
I mean, there was some speculation that Ray Stone might be off the Penrith for a 1-year deal. I haven't seen that being made official, but it was on zero tackle, I believe. So take that as you will.
Would you take Ray back at Parramatta?
I would, yeah. Obviously, there's injury concerns with Stoney, and he's avoided major injury at the Dolphins, but he has been nicked up a fair bit. Like he's been in and out of the roster, but he's been a great contributor for the Dolphins. I would absolutely take him back. We need just solid footballers in our team right now. I think that he is very much in that mould. Although, if given the opportunity to join Penrith or Parramatta, obviously in a vacuum, it's pretty clear you go to Penrith. But there are obviously dollar considerations there. But I would certainly wouldn't say no to him. Ducky asked what happened to Geimer. I don't know Ducky because he played deep into that game. I thought when he was missing from the team list, they would have been more of a consideration for a shoulder charge on report that he copped against the Roosters, but he did his posterior cruciate ligament. So I don't recall when it happened. Oh, no, he was limping in the game, but he played through it. So I sort of I did push that off as like stinger playing through it, but obviously it was more than a stinger. He ended up doing a PCL. So that's essentially a season ender for him, for poor Charlie there, which sucks, but he now turns his focus to the preseason and looking to hit the ground running, knee injury and all, in a few months' time. People are definitely keen on bringing Raymond Stone back. I'm not against it. I think you could even squeeze out a second year if that's what it takes to get him back to Parramatta over Penrith. I wouldn't say it's a no-brainer, but it seems like a good bit of business.
He's a tough man. Doesn't hurt to have hard head.
Bit of starch and defense would not go astray for us. No, I agree.
Yep, absolutely.
Zero Tackle says Daly Cherry Evans has made call on playing future. So Daly Cherry Evans is set to play in 27 with the Roosters. Okay, interesting. That's not that big a surprise, to be honest. I suppose
there's nothing with how he's playing either. No. So he doesn't look like he's. Doesn't look like he's at the end of his career.
The big thing for the Roosters obviously is the Sam Walker situation, and can they get a deal eked out there? And then is this the Warriors? Is that what this article is here? Where's my tab? Yeah, okay. There's some Fox Sports are trying to push Cleary to the Warriors. So,
yeah, I saw a little bit of that tonight.
I can see there's obviously a pretty strong connection there. Ivan, having played and coached for them, taken them to a grand final. Nathan, they try to stretch it. Nathan was born in New Zealand, and therefore there's a connection there. There's no direct connection for Nathan. The allure would be lots of money and the chance to take the Warriors to a breakthrough premiership. Let's not delude ourselves there. Look, if there is an element of truth to it, I would applaud the Warriors because that's big brass balls going all in on your good crop of current players trying to put yourself in a true premiership window. But the other consideration of Cleary, of course, is in particular PNG. So that's going to be a fun situation to monitor because Penrith, their dynasty squad, it's going to get picked apart now. Like it has been picked apart across recent years, but the true core of that squad, Edwards, Cleary, Yeo. You've already seen Fisher Harris go to the Warriors, but Leota, Martin, they're all on the true back nine of their careers, barring Cleary. So they're going to be either retiring or taking the golden parachute somewhere. And Cleary now has the incentive to seek a challenge somewhere else to, he's already an all-time great for the four-peat. But if he could win at another club, at a club that hasn't had that success, whether it's PNG's expansion, whether it's the Warriors for the maiden title, like that is true immortaldom for Cleary, regardless of whatever your take is on his origin struggles. That puts him in truly rarefied air. So I think that's the sell to Nathan.
Yeah. Okay, John. Well, I think we'll wrap things up there. So thank you, everyone that's been here in live in this really big podcast, given that we've had to include both the preview and the news podcast in one. So we really do appreciate anyone that's stuck around for the entirety of this. Thank you to anyone who is watching or listening to this on delay. As always, we appreciate your support and your kind words. Thank you to our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta, and, of course, the home of the Eels, Parramatta Leagues Club. We'll see you there Thursday night. We'll give you an update about the specific time, specific guest, as soon as we have that confirmed. John, thank you. as usual. And although it's going to be a tough week ahead for us, there's only one thing left to say, John, and that's go you mighty Eels, para proud.